3 years ago, at Indian Creek Youth Camp, a young man named James Bates handed me a note. And on that note was these words: "I've been on the road of sin long enough." Just a few moments later, he had his sins washed away by the precious blood of the Lamb in the boys' swimming pool. The very next year, a young man named Austin Day, a young man that I have known since he was born, gave me one of the biggest honors in my life, and he asked me to baptize him. He went down into that water at the boys' swimming pool, and he came up a new man. Just a few months ago, two young people that I've known since they were very young, Kathleen Mills and Brody Latner, went down to that boys' swimming pool, and in one of the sweetest moments you'll ever see, both of them were baptized by their dads. They went down into that swimming pool as a son and a daughter, and they came up as a brother and a sister. Earlier this year, we had a young lady named Chrislyn that joined our church league softball team at North Tuscaloosa. And she liked the people on the team, and she liked being around us, so she started to come to church with us. And just a couple of weeks ago, at the community retreat at Indian Creek, she made the greatest decision of her life. The pool wasn't usable, so we went old school. We went down to the creek. And that water may have been dirty, but she came up as clean as she could be. I don't think it would be possible to know exactly how many people have made that decision at that place. However, I would imagine that it's a pretty large number. And we know from Luke chapter 15 that there is a celebration in heaven when only one soul comes home. Imagine all the celebrating that has been done in heaven because of events that have taken place at Indian Creek Youth Camp. My friends, it's not about the place. It's about what happens at the place. During our week of camp, our late night devos have always been the best and my favorite part of the week. For over 20 years, those devos have been extremely special. Every year, what's up, buddy? Every year, young people come to the middle of that circle. They sit on the gym floor and they pour their hearts out. They ask for strength. They ask for prayers. They ask for help. They want to be right with God. They want to come home. And I'd imagine that it would not be possible to know how many people have asked for prayers or asked for repentance at that place. But it has to be an astronomically high number. Remember what it says in Luke chapter 15 and verse 10. There is joy in the presence of God's angels over one sinner who repents. Imagine all the celebrating that has been done in heaven because of events that took place at Indian Creek Youth Camp. My friends, it's not about that place. It's about what happens at that place. I've witnessed young people that don't know when they will get their next meal or what that meal will be. But for the summer, they come to Indian Creek Youth Camp and they get 3 meals a day. I've witnessed young people that get picked on at school, that get left out, that get excluded. But they come to Indian Creek Youth Camp and they are just like everyone else. They are a part of the group. They are included. I witnessed young people that didn't even know who Jesus was. But they come to Indian Creek Youth Camp and they hear about Him for the very first time. I've witnessed young people that feel like they are all alone, beaten down, and they are thinking some pretty dark thoughts. But they come to Indian Creek Youth Camp and they feel loved, they feel cared for, and they feel needed. But friends, it's really not about the place itself. It's about what happens in that place. The closest to heaven that I have ever felt is sitting in that pavilion with a room full of people singing praises to God. I've eaten some great food in that kitchen and went back for seconds, thirds, and fourths. Then I snuck back into the kitchen at midnight for fifths and sixths. I have sweated many beads of sweat on that ball field, playing many different sports, and I've made many little kids cry because I have a strong belief that if you're old enough to play sports, you're certainly old enough to lose. And I've spent many nights in those cabins. I've had some of the deepest spiritual conversations I've ever had in those cabins. And likewise, I've had some of the dumbest conversations of my life in those cabins. I've had nights when I couldn't sleep. I've had nights when I didn't want to sleep. And I've had nights when I was so tired that I slept like a newborn kangaroo in the pouch of its mama. I've laughed and I've cried in those cabins. I've smelled smells in those cabins that made me wish I was born without a nose. And in that boys' bathhouse, man, I've seen some things. And most of those things are things that I wish I'd never seen. In fact, some of the things that I've seen in there are so bad that my doctor actually diagnosed me with PTSD. But I've watched my kids have the time of their life on that new playground. And I've spent many afternoons in that swimming pool. And they counted that time in the swimming pool as my shower. Back in the day, we would walk up that wooden pathway by the kitchen quarters to the old pool that we used to use on top of the hill. And we would do this at night, late at night, many times when someone decided to be baptized. And many of those nights, some of you may remember this, but that wooden pathway got extremely slick from the rain. So I want you to imagine this. You got a group of 200 people walking up this narrow, steep pathway that is extremely slick and is pitch dark. We were playing a dangerous game, my friends. And if it wasn't dangerous enough, many of us were wearing cheap Dollar General flip-flops that we bought strictly to wear to camp so we didn't get athlete's foot in the bathhouse. But we start marching up that hill, and we get about halfway, and some poor guy would break through his flip-flops, and he would come rolling down the hill. We have to move to the side and let him keep rolling. The conditions were so bad that I'm not using hyperbole when I say, if you were able to make it up to the top of the hill in those conditions, it was basically the equivalent of making it to the top of Mount Everest. Mount Everest is so dangerous that when people die trying to reach the summit, they have to leave them there because they can't retrieve them in those conditions. All right? So there are dead bodies. This is real. There are dead bodies all over Everest from people that couldn't make it to the top. And I hate to admit this here tonight in front of God and all you people, but on some of those nights climbing to the old pool, the conditions were so dangerous that we had to do the same thing. All right? People would go down and we would just have to leave them there. In fact, if we went and cleared off the pathway today, we would find the bodies of those that we had to leave behind. But despite the dangers, there were a couple of positives about the treacherous journey up that hill. First of all, if someone decided to be baptized, you know that they were dead serious about being baptized. They clearly weren't doing it for the wrong reasons because they were about to risk their life to get to the top of that hill. And secondly, we had many people that would get to the top of that hill for someone else's baptism, and then they would decide to get baptized themselves because their life had just flashed before their eyes. They realized how quickly life could end, so they wanted to get right with God as soon as possible. So there were a few positives. I have memories from just about every square inch of Indian Creek Youth Camp. I love that place. but it's not about the place itself. I don't have a connection to Indian Creek Youth Camp because of how beautiful it is or how nice it is. I am connected to it because of what has happened at that place. I love Indian Creek Youth Camp because of the memories I have at that place. I love Indian Creek Youth Camp because of the people that I've been with at that place. I love Indian Creek Youth Camp because of the lives that have been changed at that place. I say all of that tonight to say this. When you give your money, when you give your time, when you give your energy to this camp, it's not about the camp. It's about the lives that are changed forever at this camp. It's about the young man that doesn't even know who Jesus is, and by the end of the week, by the end of 1 week, he is washed in the blood of the Lamb. It's about the young girl that is going through some stuff at home, man. And she feels all alone in this world. And by the end of the week, she has a group of lifelong friends. It's about the young people that are under intense, overwhelming peer pressure at school. And they've given into that peer pressure and completely lost their way. But they come to camp, they pour their hearts out, and they find their way back home. The reason I give my money, my time, my energy to camp, it's not to put AC in the pavilion. It's not to renovate a bathhouse. It's not to build a new cabin. Although those things are nice and needed, it is not the reason I do it. I do it because of what happens at Indian Creek Youth Camp. I do it because of the lives that are changed at Indian Creek Youth Camp. I do it because at Indian Creek Youth Camp, young people will see and find Jesus the Christ. At that place, the lost are found. The hungry are fed. The excluded are included. The lonely find friends. Young people find Jesus. And so I'll pour my money, my time, and my energy into Indian Creek Youth Camp because I know what happens at that place. Every dollar that I give, every minute that I spend, every bead of sweat that I produce is another young soul whose life can be changed forever. In Matthew 19, verse 13 and 14, we read these words. Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." There was no greater work for our Lord than working with young people. For him, nothing took priority over children. The television series The Chosen does a beautiful job of showing the special connection that Jesus had with young people. A connection that we find multiple times in our Bibles. And all of that has led me to this conclusion. You ready for it? We are never more like Jesus than when we make the lives of children better. And at Indian Creek Youth Camp, we are literally doing the Lord's work. God bless everyone here tonight. God bless Indian Creek Youth Camp, and most importantly, God bless the next young soul whose life will be changed forever.